Howdy CEOs, and welcome to New Players Teaching New Players, Episode 3, the series where we talk about everything Prosperous Universe. So, today is the long-awaited day. You've got your base set up, and you've laid awake many sleepless nights probably wondering what oracle of knowledge I'm going to drop on you today. And just as it was foretold, today we are boldly going where pretty much everyone goes when they first start out this game, to the market. So, just before I start dropping some dope knowledge rhymes, I just want to let everyone know that my corporation is still looking for membership. So, if you're a new player, old player, or would actually just like to build your first ship within the first 7 years, join Mercantile. We'd love to have you. You can find us on the Prosperous Universe Discord and send a DM my way if you're interested. Anywho, so let's start off with the raw basics. Flying your ship to the market. See, in Prosperous Universe, you could buy things from the CX, but it would almost be like they drop your bought goods somewhere on the spaceport's floor. You can't just pick it up until you have somewhere to store it. So there's two methods to store these goods that we're going to talk about today. The first one is in your ship, obviously, and the second one is in a warehouse. So, to fly your ship to the nearest CX, you're going to go over to the fleet window. And then you're going to hover over one of the ships that you currently have. On the right side, you're going to see a few commands. You're going to see fly, unload, cargo, and fuel. Now, you're going to click the fly command. But wait, actually, you got to make sure that your ships have fuel first. Because you can't just Marty McFly your ship and stick a few pop cans in. These ships run on fuel. So you're going to want to click the fuel button, and you're going to see that your ship has two fuel sources. You have STL and FTL. STL is used for maneuvering around the interior of a system. And you probably guessed it, FTL is used for moving around the exterior of the galactic map from system to system. If you're just starting out, you're going to have plenty of fuel, but keep a watchful eye on this as you use your ship. You can't fly around the galaxy on the magic of Christmas and bubbles, okay? So let's click out of this screen. Now, let's go back into the fly screen. So once in this window, you're going to click the destination entry field, and you're going to enter the CX's name. Now, luckily, usually most of these times, these input fields are pretty good at autofilling. So you could probably get away with usually just entering in the first few letters of the name of the CX, and it'll autofill for you. Now, after you do that, you're going to see a laundry list of destinations that your ship is going to need to jump around to if you're not in the immediate system of the CX. Okay? See, the thing is spaceflight isn't done in a single line. If we open up the galaxy map, you're going to see that planets from one destination to another are connected by lines. Now, these lines are FTL routes that your ship will take to hop from one planet to another planet. Now, if you have a base that's in the same system as a CX, you're just going to burn STL fuel, as I already mentioned. But if your destination requires some FTL hopping, you're going to see that laundry list of planets that your ship is going to hop from one to the next to get to your destination. Next, you see these two sliders right here? One indicates the amount of STL fuel you're going to burn, and one indicates the amount of FTL fuel you're somewhat willing to burn, okay? You see, you don't have to burn all the fuel to get to the destination. Instead, you can burn the minimum amount of fuel needed to get to said destination. But you see that if I start sliding the slider, the time to destination changes. And as you can imagine, the less fuel, the longer the trip. Okay, also another fun feature that they probably don't teach you in spaceflight school, well, okay. Actually, it's probably the first thing they teach you in spaceflight school. It's probably what they use as like a litmus test for flat earthers. But essentially, what your rich aunt never told you when she gave you the money to start your space empire is that planets and their orbits move. So what might cost you 60 units of STL in 22 hours might cost you less or more depending on the orbital position of these planets tomorrow. So if you're ever confused about why things cost less or more on space travel, it's because you aren't a rocket scientist and you don't have a sextant handy to calculate the orbital positions of the planets. You got money to make, just flip the lever and watch your space triangle fly through the galaxy. Another handy tip that most players would probably agree with, hopefully, is that typically for most spaceflight, keep your FTL reactor to its lowest minimum fuel burn. And then adjust the STL fuel slider until you find that kind of sweet spot between fuel burn and flight time. After you found that, you're going to click the Start button, and ta-da, your space triangle is in flight. But let's say that you come back to your space empire after mowing the lawn and you find Nagads. You actually need your space triangle to stop and go back. Well, luckily you can do that, but you really shouldn't, but you can if you want. Simply pull up the view command on your ship that's in flight and click abort. Now, your ship isn't a TARDIS, and it can't stop on a dime. So it's going to need time to finish whatever maneuver it was currently performing. After that, though, your space triangle will be good to order around again. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, there are two methods available to you to store goods. One being your ship, as we just described, and the other being a warehouse. Now, most populated planets will have a warehouse infrastructure built on them. And you can access this infrastructure in the planet window by clicking, you guessed it, the warehouse button. Now, it's here that you can rent a warehouse for a minor weekly fee. I can name a few scenarios that I've rented warehouses, and honestly, for the utility that they provide, it's a pretty great investment if you can find a purpose for them. To give you kind of an example of this purpose I mentioned, well, I was selling some things on the local market, and I wanted to fly my ship back to the System CX. So what I did is I bought a warehouse, tossed my items in the warehouse, and then flew away. Eventually, my items sold on the local market, and then I sold my warehouse. Super easy. One last point, albeit obvious point I'll make, is that both warehouses and ships have cargo space. So you can access the cargo space of a ship by pressing the cargo button on the ship command menu. And then you can access the cargo space of a warehouse by clicking the Open Store button. In both scenarios, you can place goods into these holding areas by clicking on the commodity in question and then dragging it into the designated holding area. One bonus point I'll quickly mention here, and I'll probably mention in the next video as well, but be cautious when buying things from the CX. I do believe this is a bug, but the CX will typically drop your stuff in the warehouse whenever possible. So even if you have a ship and you have a holding area available on that ship to store those goods, the game will be like, nah, you want to store this in the warehouse, I'm going to plunk it here. So why this is a cautionary tale is because then what will happen is you'll fly your ship away from the CX, your cargo hold on your ship will be completely empty. So be cautious when flying away from the CX. So that's all I have about the basics of spaceflight. Tune in next time as we talk about what happens when you land at said CX. Till next time.